half-breeds were the other. So obviously, one side's going to support and one side's not going to support, right? And the side that did not support Hayes were the stalwarts. So the stalwarts were against the Hayes administration, and they gave him the bad nickname of Granny Hayes. Granny Hayes. That's what the stalwarts called President Hayes. Now, I want Josh to remind me, when I get done lecturing, to talk about, this is kind of a disrespectful thing the stalwarts said about Hayes, right? I want you to remind me to talk about my viewpoints on when we were in D.C. on the respect or disrespect shown to President Trump when we were there, because I've never seen anything like it, I'm going to tell you. But anyway. Now, the half-breeds, now think about it. Now, I want you to really listen to this. You know the stalwarts didn't support him, right? The half-breeds half-heartedly supported him. So they really did and they really didn't. Some did, some didn't. They showed support, but I'm not sure how strong it was. So the half-breeds, they were led by James G. Blaine of Maine and John Sherman of Ohio. Those were members of Congress. James G. Blaine of Maine and John Sherman of Ohio led this group known as the half-breeds, and they half-heartedly supported President Hayes. That means that they didn't exactly throw all their support to him. They probably supported him when it was convenient for them and didn't support him when it was going to be hurtful to them or their cause. So Hayes has got troubles. He's got Democratic-controlled Congress. He's got half his own party, the stalwarts, against him. He's got the other half of his own party, the half-breeds, that kind of support him. He's in a world of hurt. And the half-breeds, again, are led by James G. Blaine of Maine and John Sherman of Ohio. And he has a horrible 4 years. I'll just leave it at that. Okay? Which will take us to our next subtopic, which is the election of 1880. So we're going to have a lot of presidential elections here. The election of 1880. Well, the Republicans are trying to find somebody other than Rutherford B. Hayes to run for president. They're not real hot on him, obviously. He's not going to be considered for re-election. And the two names that popped up within the Republican Party that they may nominate were James G. Blaine, who controlled the half-breeds, right? And who else that you might not expect that would be considered again after the bad run he had? No? Who? Grant. The Republicans actually considered nominating former President Grant. Again, even though he had a horrible administration. They were a little bit desperate. They were considering former President Grant, and they also considered James G. Blaine, who was the head of the Republican half-breeds. Neither one arose much enthusiasm among the Republican Party. Neither one got them too excited. So what happens sometimes when these names that first came out, and it came out when Bill Clinton, back in 1992, when he ended up getting the nomination for president, he was considered a what candidate? Dark, you ever heard that, Tom? A dark horse candidate. Dark horse is somebody you might pick in a horse race that the odds are really big against you, 20 to 1 to win, and they end up being better than you thought. Well, they're milling around Blaine and they're milling around Grant, and they finally do what sometimes happens. They settle on what's considered a dark horse candidate in former Ohio Senator James Garfield. So the Republicans think about Grant, they think about James G. Blaine. Why would you maybe not pick James G. Blaine, although he might be a good politician? Because he's already got half the people against him, the stalwarts, right? And Grant just isn't going to work. I mean, the guy's bad, okay? So, they pick a dark horse. An Ohio senator by the name of James Garfield. Now, he might be considered more of a half-breed, but maybe not totally. If you had to choose, is he a half-breed or a stalwart, people would say he was a half-breed, although he never was dumb enough to really come out and say it. Now the man he chose as his vice presidential running mate was Chester A. Arthur, who no doubt was a stalwart. He was against everything Rutherford B. Hayes did. So the man that James Garfield will run with for president in 1880 will be Chester A. Arthur, who was no doubt a staunch stalwart. So you got kind of a balanced ticket in a way, although Garfield really wasn't a half-breed, he was just a good Republican. Okay? Well, the Democrats, who had lost the last 3 elections, are in a world of hurt again, and they actually choose Civil War veteran Winfield Hancock as their candidate, who nobody gives a rat's behoot about. Okay? So Winfield Hancock is going to be the Democratic nominee. He's a Civil War veteran. And the Democrats have not done well. They've lost the last 3 presidential elections. And ironically, this was a close election because you had really 2 what? No names. You had a dark horse in James Garfield, who was a former senator, and you had this Civil War veteran, Winfield Hancock. Okay? And sometimes when you don't have candidates that really stick out there, it becomes a close election. And this was very close in both the popular vote and the Electoral College. There were 9.1 million popular votes cast. 9.1 million people went to the polls in 1880. And Garfield won by 39,000 votes is all. That's 0.004% for you math majors. That's pretty, this, you know, 1%, this is 4/1000ths of 1%. That's how close it was in the electoral votes. 9.1 million popular votes cast. Garfield wins by 39,000. 0.004%. However, we all know that popular vote and $1.25 to buy you a pop now, is that what they are in the pop machine, $1.25?
Yeah.
It's electoral vote that counts, and it was pretty close. Garfield wins 214 to 155 to become the nation's 20th president. Yep. He wins 214 to 155. He had enough to win, but I'll tell you what, Hancock made a run having 155. So 214 to 155, and as a result, James Garfield becomes the nation's 20th president of the United States. Okay, we're going to quit there, and we'll talk about a profile on Garfield tomorrow, but I want to talk a little bit about this situation I talked about in D.C. Okay? Any questions at all on that? Okay, we'll continue with the profile on Garfield tomorrow.